TYT would like to thank Squarespace for making possible our coverage of the 2017 Oslo Freedom Forum. Whether you need a website, a domain, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. You can start your free trial at squarespace.com/TYT, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. We've got a human rights situation developing in the Philippines that we're going to talk about now.
Right, yeah. I didn't actually see any speakers this year from the Philippines, but this is a story that's not anything to do with the ongoing. I think people have heard about the targeted killings and the drug war being a cloak to basically just raise complete neighborhoods. But this is actually about Mindanao, which is the southern island where there's Muslim separatists, and several of them, and a small faction, which is a couple of years ago they pledged allegiance to ISIS, and they've been ever since. There's been more and more skirmishes, but at this point, in the town of Marawi, there's a siege after Abu Sayyaf took a group of hostages in a church, and now Duterte, who's on a trip to Russia, has declared martial law in the area, and so clashes between security forces and about 100 fighters have ensued, leaving at least 3 members of the security forces dead. The attackers reportedly burned a Catholic church, the city jail, and 2 schools, as well as occupied the main streets and 2 bridges leading to the city. Located some 816 kilometers south of the capital, Manila. I mean, when I read that, it very much felt like a Mosul 2014 situation. And I think that's why I was like, let's report on this story, because I think the assassinations and the drug war have been kind of dominating the news of the Philippines, but this is actually a very real thing that's happening there. I know journalists have been killed. There's been hostages taken, hostages killed, and it's a real thing.
Yeah, and obviously it's a conflict that the military has to varying degrees been involved in for years upon decades.
Yeah.
But obviously it's ramped up, and the affiliation with the group with ISIS.
They were one of the smaller factions of the separatist group, but now I believe that there's been credible reports showing that funding streamed through other places that fund ISIS have gone through.
Yeah, and look, I've read that possibly because of how brutal Duterte can be and the military can be there, that the membership has actually become much smaller in size. But that doesn't mean that they can't organize 100 people to come in and spread absolute chaos in a very short period of time.
You're still not engendering goodwill either way, if you're razing a place to the ground and occupying it, or if you're declaring martial law.
Yeah, it seems to be a popular strategy in a lot of different parts of the world, though.
And there had been quite a promising peace process since 1996. There'd been ongoing things, and there's been a couple of failed uprisings from other separatist Islamist groups. But the peace process had been ongoing. There were talks, and the idea was to give a kind of semi-autonomous Muslim area in the south. But I mean, it's a mixed place. It's the Philippines. So Duterte has declared martial law, and he's coming home from his Russia trip early. And in typical Duterte fashion, ridiculous statements like this are flying out of his mouth. To those that have experienced martial law, it would not be any different from what President Ferdinand Marcos did. Duterte said, "I'll be harsh." Yeah, I believe you. And Duterte had earlier hinted at declaring martial law in Mindanao on May 19th, saying, "If I declare martial law in Mindanao, I will solve all that ails the island." I don't believe that, though.
Actually, that sounds exactly like a quote from Donald Trump at the RNC. I'm the only one that can save you.
They are like twinsies.
Yeah, and look, they spoke recently, and Donald Trump congratulated him on his great progress in the war on drugs. So I mean, Duterte, as we've reported on this in TYT so many times now, he is a guy who has bragged that he's killed thousands of individuals and has said that he has personally done executions. And he had been very clear about this before Donald Trump met with him and was effusive in his praise. And this guy saying he's going to be tough, which that's ominous words coming from a guy with this reputation, saying he doesn't know how long the declaration will be in effect. Apparently they have a limit of 60 days. Whether he will actually abide by that, we don't know. And he also said, by the way, that theoretically that he might want to extend this to the rest.
This is his wet dream, martial law.
Yeah.
That's like what he'd like the Philippines to be.
Yeah.
And please don't get me wrong, I imagine there is a significant portion of the population, especially the Catholic population in Mindanao, that obviously want protection. This is very scary. So there's a couple of photos posted on social media by Marawi residents, this is the town that's under siege, showed armed men roaming the city with the black flags of ISIL, which I'm sure is terrifying. So I'm not gonna say that martial law isn't the temporary answer for this. I'm just saying, in the hands of Duterte, this is something. This is nothing good.
Yeah,
nothing.
You can worry about where it will go, And we know already, I mean, thousands of people apparently desperately trying to get out of that area in the short term. Yeah, it's obviously got to be incredibly scary for the people living there. They're really, as in a lot of other situations like this, they're really stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Right, because where are they going to flee to? Honestly, usually displaced people flee to poor urban areas, and that's where the insane drug-related violence has been happening. So it's going to probably apply even more pressure to that situation in the Philippines.